is this. The biggest threat to nuclear energy is ignorant fear-mongering. This is 100% something I have seen for a very, very long time. Ever since I was in the Navy, and I actually started to learn about nuclear power more than I knew originally. Like, I know how nuclear power plants work now, right? I know how a nuclear reactor works now. It's not really that complicated. If you really want to know, I could explain it, but I'm not going to be drawing any fucking technical diagrams on stream. Has to. Because none of that's necessary for what we're talking about. But essentially what it is that just a giant pot of nuclear material being transported to one of the most dangerous roads in the US. Yep. That's exactly what it is. It's a giant pot of nuclear material. Most likely nuclear fuel, as most waste is not transported anymore. It's usually kept on site in water tanks so that they can some sites use the latent heat to do certain things with, like to preheat water and all that stuff. Others just use it for storage. Basically, the whole storage of nuclear waste problem was solved over like 2 decades because no state wanted to have a giant repository of nuclear waste in their state, which is, I don't know why, it's one of the best ways to make fucking money from the United States government. And you could literally just cut a check to every fucking citizen, right? Like, I think it was Arizona had it, and they built it inside of a mountain. Like, it was going to be one of the best things ever for us to do this. But the logistics of transporting all the nuclear waste on trains, nobody likes nuclear waste. Nobody wants that transported on trains, you know, because sometimes trains derail. But the one thing they forgot that almost nobody ever talks about is that they don't transport nuclear waste in the same kind of way that they transport other things. Or nuclear material at all, period. What I mean by that is you're not going to have these giant rail cars that are like gasoline tanks full of like nuclear waste that's like liquid, or giant cargo containers full of nuclear waste that's solid, or, you know, in just the regular cargo containers. They're going to be in something like this. And if you're wondering how they test these, they crash trains and rocket sleds into them. Yeah. Not only does it prevent almost all radiation leakage, or more to the point, or excuse me, more specifically, it attenuates about 99% of all the radiation that comes out of it. For the layman, that means it blocks it. And it is built so that it will not crack. I think they test them. They also test them by dropping them from an extreme height. Not when they have nuclear material in them, obviously, but I'm talking about when they built them. This is how they used to test. This is what they used to test them. Will it survive a train wreck? And the answer is yes. It will survive the most ridiculous train wreck you've ever fucking seen. Like I said, they crash rocket sleds into them. They drop them from extreme heights. These things are manufactured to survive things that we do not manufacture anything else to survive. And the reason is because of how dangerous it is. See, this is what happens when you understand dangerous things, is that you build correctly for the dangerous thing. Right? This is what we've done with nuclear power. We understand how dangerous it is. So we prepare for that. And so if you know how dangerous something is, like fire, right? Fire is very dangerous, especially when you're living in the bush. But, so you know how dangerous it is. So what do? You take precautions. You take enough precautions to ensure that 99.9999999 to infinity times that you use the damn thing, it will not result in your death or the immediate death of everyone around you. And this kind of thinking is what got us into the situation that we're in now with all the climate change and all that other stuff. Because if we had allowed nuclear power to progress properly and we built our grid, a lot more of our grid on nuclear power, we would not be having the same talk about climate change. One would assume that even more cars would be electric, because the electricity prices would be relatively cheaper compared to what they are now, based on the fact that nuclear power is it's a more steady form of well, no, that's not. I don't want to say something that's super inaccurate. It is the here's a meme that pretty much fucking nuclear power is the safest, cleanest way to make electricity. Boom. Yes. Is a disaster waiting to happen. Yes. So is a coal-fired power plant. Right? Nuclear power is a disaster waiting to happen. So is a solar plant. Right? It depends on what you're doing and how dangerous it is. Many of these solar plants are fucking death rays, right? They kill birds, they destroy the environment, right? Same with windmills. You have to they fuck with birds. If you put them in the ocean, apparently they fuck with sea life too. So the whole point of this is that the reason we are doing those things like solar and wind is because we're afraid of this right here. And the reason we're afraid of this is because people who are ignorant made us afraid of them. The same way that so many people who are ignorant are making people afraid of vaccines. The way that people are so many ignorant people are making people afraid of genetically modified organisms, GMOs. The problem, like, for instance, my problem with GMOs is not that GMOs exist. My problem with GMOs is many of them are literally made so that the plant in question can resist pesticides more. So that they can spray more pesticides on them to keep the bugs off them and it won't hurt the plant. That's my problem. And the problem is not the GMO itself. It's the fact that they're spraying massive amounts of these fucking horrible fucking chemicals on them. And they make them genetically resistant to these chemicals so that the plant's not hurt and they can be sold. I don't like buying shit with lots of pesticides on it. But genetically modified organisms that are designed to survive better in certain climates or grow more or produce more of the thing you like is something that we've been doing since we started agriculture. What's up, Agonab? How you doing, buddy? Bananas do not look like bananas look like today. Apples do not look like apples do today. Almost none of our common food staples that we eat this day look the way they did 12,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago when we started picking up agriculture, mainlining that shit. Wheat is another one. That's the basic. I'm barely alive. I haven't seen a single cat on my morning walk. No! We can't have that. We can't have that. Do you hear me? We cannot have it. All right, so. And it's basically, and for me, it's a basic fear of the unknown when you know something is dangerous, but you don't understand it and therefore fear it irrationally rather than fearing it rationally. See, I don't have an irrational fear of nuclear power. I have completely and utterly rational fears of nuclear power. I will fucking go to bat on this. Every fear that I have of nuclear power is 100% rational and based on my understanding of how nuclear power works. Simple. So when I turn around and go, we should have nuclear power plants fucking everywhere. And the thing about it is that nuclear power is even safer than it was back when these motherfuckers were kicking around screaming about how nuclear power is a disaster waiting to happen. Yes, any human endeavor is a disaster waiting to happen. Not like Chernobyl, so fair enough. And to be fair to the people who are afraid, I do understand why they are afraid. My problem is that the government and the actual people who are supposed to be smart in our government did not do an adequate job of explaining this bullshit to the public. And it's just like with the stuff with climate change. The reason there's so much screaming back and forth in the public domain about climate change is because neither people who are on the alarmist side understand what the fuck they're talking about, and the vast majority of people on the fucking people who don't believe in climate change don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And the reason I say that is because almost none of the people that are screaming about this shit are scientists and or understand the issue, right? You see it play out time and time again in these TV interviews where you have somebody who's slightly more knowledgeable than the other able to BTFO them simply because they can bring up a point that the other person can't contend. And the reason the other person can't contend it is either because they're ignorant or they're just fucking stupid and or so incompetent that they do understand the problem but are unable to articulate it in a way that they should be able to, especially in front of the public, right? I met 2 cats at once, neither of them let me pet them. Damn. That is a faux shame. Faux shame. How dare they? How dare they? I press the button and my monitor goes out. Hang on a second. We gotta do this bullshit again. It didn't do this all day after the stream. It's only when I'm streaming that it does this. Ugh. I bet. It's the freaking adapter. Playing? Yeah. Come on, dude. Yeah, that's me beeping. Hang on, I'll be right back. Oh God, this is really tough life I'm living with. That's you. For some reason, it keeps losing signal, and I don't know why. But of course, unplugging it and plugging it back up always fixes it. But it requires me to, like, dig under my desk. No idea what's going on. Anyway, so, like I said, with just the inability for people who, especially the people who advocate for climate change, advocate for policies to fix climate change, absolutely do not understand what they're talking about. And when you start to understand the problem that we are facing, you understand that the vast majority of people who are talk about it, especially politicians, don't understand it at all. And the reason is because, okay, I'll go through this again. An example I can give is one time I was watching Sky News and they were having one of these debates between somebody who is, I believe they were a physicist, not a climate scientist, but a physicist, and somebody who was part of the fucking Australian government. Were having a debate, and the person from the Australian government was the person who was advocating that we need to literally stop using fossil fuels because we're gonna bake the earth, and you know the other guy was on the skeptical side. And essentially, he kept asking her about how much of the atmosphere is CO2. He kept asking her that question. And the reason is because if a normal person hears how much of the atmosphere is actually made up of CO2, and then you tell them that putting more of that number into the atmosphere is going to burn up the planet, they're not going to believe you. So it's a good persuasion technique because of people don't know how to do math in their head. A lot of people don't understand percentages or math or things like that. So what that means is that CO2 is like, is it 4% of the atmosphere? I don't want to get this wrong. I think it's 4%. Excuse me. Apologies. It's 0.04% of the Earth's atmosphere is carbon dioxide. So, let me say that again. Out of 100% of the Earth's atmosphere, 70% of it being nitrogen, was that like 20-something% being oxygen, 0.04% of the Earth's atmosphere is CO2. So you can understand why, if you were to say this to laymen, they're just like, well, if it's so small, why the fuck does it matter? Well, CO2 is a secondary greenhouse gas. And what that means is that, at least according to the greenhouse gas hypothesis is that CO2 will cover the planet like a blanket, trapping more radiative heat that is reflected from the Earth's surface from escaping into space. And so what this will do is it will slowly heat up the Earth the more CO2 is in the atmosphere. Now, there is a curve of diminishing returns, but that doesn't mean it still won't continue to heat up. It just means that you add less heat per amount of CO2. So once you're already at saturation point, adding more CO2 won't really increase the rate of heating hardly at all. That's kind of what it is, right? Like in a video game where you've got diminishing returns on an ability, right? Where you can't keep stunning these people over and over again. Eventually, they'll become immune to it kind of deal. It's kind of like that, except different. It basically stops heating up. But the reason that the theory is so pervasive, or the hypothesis is so pervasive, is because what happens is that once CO2 reaches a certain amount, once it starts heating up a certain amount, it starts putting more water vapor into the atmosphere because it heats up the Earth, which heats up the oceans, which means more water evaporates, right? Okay. And the more water that evaporates, it goes into the atmosphere. Water vapor is a primary greenhouse gas, which means it is significantly better at trapping greenhouse gases than, it is significantly better at trapping heat as a greenhouse gas than CO2 is. So, ergo, the hypothesis is we increase CO2, CO2 heats up the planet, which in turn creates more water vapor, which heats up the planet even more, creating a negative feedback loop that continuously heats up the planet. Until the point where either it destroys our biosphere, destroys most of the plants and animal life on the planet, or completely bakes us like Venus, which is absolutely retarded, by the way. Venus was not... let me just put it to you like this. Even if Venus was a more Earth-like planet back in the day, and greenhouse gases are in fact the reason that Venus is the way it is, it heated up because of all the CO2 in the atmosphere, there is no fucking way we would know that. I just want to state this for the record. Based on what Venus looks like today, there is no way you would actually fucking understand this, right? There's no connection between the two. Venus's atmosphere is almost completely carbon dioxide, like 98%. And it's hundreds, if not thousands of times more thick than our atmosphere, right? So one of the reasons why it's so hot on the surface is because of of what's called the heat of compression. So as you compress something, it heats up. That's one of the reasons why the atmosphere is so hot, is there's so much shit on top of it pushing down, it's creating lots of heat. Once you get up to about 20 miles in the atmosphere, you're at about 1 atmospheric pressure, right? So like Earth standard atmospheric pressure. Well, at Earth standard atmospheric pressure on Venus, it's about average 100 degrees. So is it hotter than the Earth? Yes, but it's also significantly closer to the sun. And its atmosphere is completely filled with CO2. So the fact that it's only an average of 100 degrees, while the average temperature on Earth, or the Earth's temperature is like 80 or something, right? I'm quite sure that Venus didn't have coal power plants. No, that's not the contention. The contention is the atmosphere is full of CO2. Basically, a lot of people, including Neil deGrasse Tyson on Seth MacFarlane's fucking Cosmos-like show, said that Venus is the way it is because of runaway greenhouse gas effect. And the thing about it is that even if that were the case, there's no way we would know that. That is a supposition based on the flimsiest of fucking evidence and data that it's ridiculous. They're basically using it as a persuasion technique and not an actual scientific statement of fact, but they're stating it as if it were a scientific statement of fact on a show where a physicist is basically saying that he is stating facts, and it still continues to this fucking day to bother me. Oh boy, okay. Because it's there's so many, we have all these models and theories about how the solar system and the universe works, but they're not correct. And we know they're not correct because there are outliers. There are things about these systems we cannot explain. So we know our models are not correct. They're just sort of correct. And eventually one day we'll get enough data to make the models correct. Just like the sun having a corona that's hotter than the surface basically makes the current sun model irrelevant. Because if it is a giant nuclear power plant in the center, then it radiates heat outwards. So if it's a giant nuclear power plant that radiates heat outwards, how the fuck can the corona be hotter than the surface? like that does not, you cannot square that circle unless there's some other mechanism going on that we don't understand, which means the model is incorrect, right? Just like the same with the formation of the solar system and how comets have all basically been rocky bodies and almost none of them we've seen any ice on. So they went from the fully ice ball model to the dirty ice ball model, and we're slowly being drugged into the, well, maybe most comets aren't actually any of this bullshit. We don't see any ice on these motherfuckers. So what I'm saying is that there's so much there. I'm pretty sure this has always been the case, but it's even more pervasive now, where one of the reasons why the basic population doesn't understand science is twofold. It's scientists' inability to communicate science and journalists' ability to make every fucking thing that is discovered about science some type of fucking, like, either catastrophe, some amazing event, or some great discovery on par with relativity, because they have to sensationalize everything to be able to get clicks and eyeballs, right? And they've been doing this forever. Scientific America did it too, man, and it really made me mad when they started. And this was back when I was a kid, when they were doing the same shit with climate change. I've described the article that I've talked about so many times. I might want to go back and read it one day. But it was just because the thing about it is that it was just how I felt that the article was like. It was not showing any of the science. They were basically discussing hypothetical models that they had made about what would happen if the ice caps were to melt. And so they basically presupposed that climate change was going to fucking melt the ice caps, rather than discussing the science behind how that was going to happen, what the mechanisms were, what the risk profile. No, it was basically a fluff piece about how Florida was going to flood, and looking at the topographical information about how that was going to happen, and why it was all going to be blamed, and why we were going to blame it on climate change. Or more specifically, how climate change was to blame, or global warming as it was at the time. And so it's the same mechanism where people are so hysterical about climate change as the reason they're so hysterically afraid of nuclear power. It's the same thing. It's people who don't understand these things basically spreading misinformation on top of a scientifically illiterate population with politicians who will lie through their fucking teeth to fearmonger for stupid shit because it'll give them some kind of political win, right? Well, the other faction's promoting it. Well, let's create a fear campaign to fucking shut it down, and that way they'll lose the election, right? That kind of thing. Now, I'm not really sure about any of this stuff if that's exactly what happened with nuclear power. I'm assuming, based on how humans work and how we know politics works, that some of this is true. Simply because humans are going to human, right? So the best predictor of human behavior is past human behavior, and if we look at the past, we can see how humans behaved. And so, ergo, you could probably predict in general over the course of time how in general an entire population is going to act, with certain caveats, right? And so now we're at a precipice. We have these people who are saying we need to give up fossil fuels. But they want to, the only option for them in their minds is solar and wind. And solar and wind are not going to be able to replace our current electric grid. They're just not. The technology's not there. The infrastructure's not there. And in some, battery technology's not there. In some places, the sun doesn't shine. In some places, the wind doesn't blow. And in places where the wind does blow, it doesn't blow all the time. And in places where there's a lot of sunshine, well, the sun doesn't shine all the time. And it's not just at night. We're talking like extreme cloud cover, maybe, rain and weather events will obviously will lower solar panel efficiency. And especially if your solar plant is not the electronic versions that convert sunlight directly into electricity. If you've actually got a solar power plant where it uses where it uses mirrors to concentrate the sun's power into a singular point in a tower, and then that light is then beamed down into the power plant where it's used to heat oil. That type of solar power plant literally will not function if the sun is not shining directly on it. Whereas the electronic ones just lose efficiency, right? And so we can either deindustrialize our entire civilization to combat climate change, which, if say the United States was the only, the United States and Europe did that, it wouldn't save the world. Even if climate change were doing all the things that they said it was going to do, it still wouldn't save the world. Because China's not going to do it. India's not going to do it. Russia's not going to do it. Right? And India and China have the biggest populations on the planet. Do you really think they are not going to build as many coal fucking fired power plants as they can to give their people electricity? You know, the people that vote for them? So that they can give them more food, so they can give them the prosperity that the United States and Europe have had for the last 100 years? Like, what are we talking about here? Of course they are. They don't give like, peasants in fucking China and peasants in fucking India don't give a single fuck about climate change, dude. And the politicians they vote for don't either, because the constituents don't. So if you want India and you want China to get off of fossil fuels, then you need to make a better form of power production that will allow them to do so and still achieve the same goal. You're talking about industrializing civilizations at this point. Like, they need to build these things to raise their populations out of extreme poverty. And the best way to do that is with energy production. Because the more energy you have, the more things you can do, right? It's as simple as like having a continuous light source when the sun goes down allows you to do more things than if you had to use light sources that were done with fire, right? It leads to better health outcomes. The light is better, so you know there's all kinds of like ancillary little shit that just goes off that forks off from it that are simply beneficial, like the ability to study at night and be able to read at night without destroying your eyeballs or having a fire near you or something like that, right? And so out of all of this, nuclear power is the way to go. And the best part is that it does look like we are very, very close to getting fusion, which will be even better. And you know what the funny thing is? Fusion is even more dangerous. But everybody wants fusion, right? Everybody wants fusion. Nobody wants fission. But fusion is more dangerous. To be fair, it's because they don't understand. The nuclear disaster stuff for most power plants, the problem that a lot of people have is what happens if the reactor melts down? Well, we have a plan for that. It's the same thing that happened with 3 Mile Island. How many people died during that 3 Mile Island thing? 3. And they were all nuclear workers. Yep. Do you know why? Because we're smart. That's why. They built the plant specifically in mind for that type of disaster. And so when it happened, they had a battle plan ready to go, and they did it, and it worked. Yeah. That's why it could be safe. And even in today, modern plants are even better, right? You got to remember that the vast majority of power plants that we have in the United States and around the world, really, with the exception of places that are building new ones like France and such, a lot of the power plants were built before we had computers to build them. So they were made with literal dudes drawing with slide rules and shit. Yeah, old school tools. Whipping out the fucking abacus in this motherfucker, right? And so now we can fully design power plants in computers and run simulations on how they'll run. Now, obviously, simulations aren't real life, but you can get damn close because, as one might understand, the laws of thermodynamics are quite clear, right? And we can program those into a simulation so that we can literally test how these things are going to function. And then once you build them, you've already back in the day, you got to think about it. When you build a new reactor, you've never even tested it. It's going to be a new thing, even if it is a design that you've already done before. Well, now you can run thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of simulations of a single reactor type and then iterate that across multiple plants with computer simulations. And it's getting even better than it used to be. And not only that, the plants are better designed, not just because we use computers, but because we have knowledge from the past about how to build these things. Like for instance, the first nuclear submarine, when it was called a certain type of power plant. I think it was called S5W. That was the name of it. of the type of the plant, not the submarine, the plant, the nuclear power plant inside the submarine. They all have weird little names. And it was basically the worst monstrosity you've ever fucking seen of like techno punk valves everywhere, right? Like there's valves just coming out of every place because they didn't really know what the fuck they were doing, and they were just kind of fucking rolling with it. You know, they were just fucking shooting out of the seat of their pants. Now, obviously, we're talking about engineers and scientists who are very intelligent and know what the fuck they're doing. So when they're shooting from their hips and they're doing all this stuff, it's much better planned. But the reason I say this is because they didn't have a lot of the design principles that we do today, because they didn't have the giant shoulders to stand on. We stand upon their shoulders, so we know how to make plants more efficient. We know where to better place valves and coolant systems and all these other things, so that plants are far more efficient and we're far more able to control them without having fucking valves coming out of every fucking orifice all around you. Like it's absolutely crazy. And even on the plant that I was on a submarine, it still had a few places where we got to put this valve here, but it's kind of a tight space, so we're just gonna like run it up the side of the ceiling, come down, and it's gonna be directly above your head, and that kind of stuff, right? Where it's like, why wouldn't you just like line them up all nice and neat? And it's like most of the stuff is that way, but there's still some things that aren't. And with the modern way we design things, we can make them far more efficient than these older ones used to be literally because we are standing upon their shoulders, and all of the mistakes that they made and all the things that they learned, we learned them. Right? So if a nuclear power plant were to have a meltdown, most of them have like a cavern built out below them where the nuclear reactor can literally just be dropped in and you bury it in concrete. And the thing is lined with like concrete and lead and filled with water. Right? So it's twofold. It's I think they use a method to lead infused concrete. I think that's what they do. I'm not really sure. Don't hold me to that. That may be some fanciful new tech that I heard of that never got developed, so forgive me. But literally, you could just have a lead lining outside of on concrete. Like, it's not that fucking hard, right? Just plates like that thick. Lead's very good at attenuating radiation. And on top of that, you fill the goddamn thing full of water, so the reactor drops in because it's melting down. Uncontrolled, can't fuck it. This reactor's fucking done. They drop it in the fucking hole, which is usually really fucking deep, and then they will fill it with water to cool it and cap it, right? And potentially they'll pour cement over it once it's cooled down enough to where they can do that. But basically, it's a casket that will hold the reactor so that while it melts down, it will just simmer in this fucking pot and it won't go nowhere. And that's the basic safety mechanism, and it absolutely 100% works, hands down. Like, the reactor's not gonna heat up so much that's gonna be able to melt through the fucking Earth's crust and like go to the core and explode or some dumb shit like that, right? That is fanciful at the very least. And even if it were hot enough to do that, it would only get so far before it would literally just stop, because it would lose all of its heat to the rock around it, right? Like, I'm obviously, that's very, very fanciful kind of thing, and that's what that's the casket thing is. What it's supposed to prevent. So. The funny thing is, aboard submarines, there is no reactor eject button. You cannot get rid of the reactor. There is a system designed to emergency cool it on some nuclear power plants, where you use seawater and you dump it directly into the reactor because you have no other choice. Which, by the way, seawater is very bad for reactors. Don't ever do that unless you absolutely have to. Which is one of those things where it's like, well, the reactor's already fucked up. Dump seawater on it because it'll keep it cold. It'll keep it cold. Especially when you're, cruising around the Arctic and shit, right? And a lot of the fear comes from things like radiation. But the funny thing is that radiation is not the main issue when it comes to nuclear power plants, especially fission power plants. It's the waste and the contamination of like local water supplies. And it's like the fear mongering is absolutely insane, because I definitely remember reading this article when the climate change debate really took off during Trump's first run for president, when he started calling it a fucking scam, and I'm just like, oh my, a hoax, and I'm just like, I mean, the thing about it is he's not wrong, right? They're like Russia and China. You better believe that they are using state-sponsored programs to make the West not use fossil fuels and to switch over to solar and electric, and for a giant portion of the to get a portion of the population to completely resist being energy independent and all that stuff. I guarantee you they are absolutely doing that, because if I were them, that's what I would be doing. I would be agitating. I would be paying for agitation in your country to make you get off fossil fuels, because if I can make you switch from fossil fuels, then you're weak, and then I can BTFO you. Yeah, that's what I would do. And so I'm assuming that China and Russia, you know, some of our greatest frenemies we've ever had, are absolutely going to fuck us in the ass when it comes to this stuff. So when he says it's a hoax, he's right on one hand, because there are people who are doing that. But on the other, it's like, it's not really. There is a problem, but it's just not as bad as they say it is. And that could also be part of the like hoax thing. Not that he fucking knows that. Trump, I mean. Not that Trump knows that. I think he just sees it as a ploy from China and Russia to get us from stop buying things. And we know this happened, right? We actually know this happened, because wasn't Russian propagandists caught in Europe, in Germany specifically, agitating for them to get off fossil fuels? Weren't they funded? Weren't a bunch of these green motherfuckers funded by Russia to get them to do this? And don't get me wrong, I 100% was on board with Greenpeace's original mission to prevent nuclear proliferation. I'm 100% cool with that. Nukes are very dangerous. This is 100% true. But going from nukes are very dangerous to we shouldn't use nukes at all and nuclear power is the devil is way too far. Way too far for me. And it is one of these things where it's like, well, we kind of fucked ourselves because we haven't been building nuclear power plants for a long time, and so it's going to take a while to catch up. But it might not take as long as you think, because modern nuclear power design, we may be able to build small modular nuclear reactors where we can continuously just keep expanding current power plants that we if we build them today. It'll still take a long time, but it won't take as long as you think it would, right? Especially because we know what we're doing, and if we can get it done. A lot of the problem is the red tape. A lot of the problem is nobody wants to live next to a power plant but people who understand it. I have no problems living next to a nuclear power plant. At all. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm going to buy my own radiometer, because why would you not? Duh. I don't trust people 100%. I trust the science 100%. Especially when it comes to nuclear power, because that shit doesn't lie. Not like that. And this kind of bullshit right here, and the misinformation around it, is why we're in the situation we're in right now, where we are still wanting to drill baby drill. Like, the Trumpolophagus would not be able to say drill baby drill and it be as big of a thing if we had nuclear power plants all over the country pumping out tons of power and lowering your electric bill to the point where it's like, well, my electric bill's so low, why don't I just get an electric car and throw this gasoline motherfucker out the way, and I could just charge that sumbitch? Because for the vast majority of Americans, the current state of electric car batteries should be more than enough for you for your day-to-day travels. Now, that's not true for everybody, right? Everybody's different, but it's true for the vast majority of people. Like, for me, like, when I was in the Navy, it was different because I had to drive cross country a lot to visit people, because I don't like flying. Not because I don't like flying itself. I absolutely love flying. I hate the TSA, and I wish that organization would burn in hell, if hell exists, because that's where they need to go. I'm not a big fan at all. I don't like being groped to get on a fucking plane. When some asshole could just bring a fucking shoe bomb and he just forgot his lighter. Oh my god, dude. Anyway, what the fuck was I even talking about? I know I was talking about nuclear power, but I lost my spot. It was the fear mongering around it has really made us less competitive. Like, this is something that we should have been doing the entire time, but pearl clutching assholes and ignorance has led us to the point where we cannot. And it's so fucking sad. It's so sad. Oh, I was talking about electric cars, yeah. Yeah, for the vast majority of Americans, and even myself today, an electric car is exactly the kind of thing I need. Because it would be cheaper. Because here's the thing, right? Because I drive so little compared to the way I used to drive, Most people don't understand that gasoline is not something that lasts forever. Gasoline starts breaking down as soon as you make it. Slowly at first. But after a few months, it'll basically turn to sludge in your gas tank. So if you leave a car to sit for a year, you probably need to drain the tank. Unless you've put some type of detergent that is designed to make the thing more stable inside in the fuel, it will degrade over time. And so when you see these people starting up some post-apocalyptic car after 30 years, right, and it's apparently got like a half a tank of gas, well, that gas is essentially just decomposed sludge at this point, right? It breaks down relatively easily. And so for me, it's actually a waste of gas. Like, I really do wish I had an electric motorcycle. I would probably ride my motorcycle more. All right, I'm getting too hot. I gotta put my shirt on. Ugh. Oh yeah, I am big disappointed with a lot of stuff like this. Because and you know what the really funny thing is that you see the same type of people who are screaming about, you know, oh, I believe the science, you know, climate change, I believe the science. And then they turn around and say shit like this. And it's like, that's what you call scientism. That's someone who believes the science because some fucking asshole in a lab coat or a tie told them that the science was settled. And then you have the other side of the problem where ignoramuses on the other side of the argument who don't know what science being settled means are screaming, the science is never settled. The science is never settled. It's just like, yes. Science is never settled. Just like I was talking about with our models of the sun, with our models of the solar system's creation, our models of the fucking moon, and our models of the fucking earth. They're all wrong. And we know they're wrong because there are mysteries still left to discover. There's anomalies that we cannot explain with our models. Therefore, ergo, the models are wrong. But they are the best thing we have. They're a starting point. That doesn't mean they're completely wrong. That just means they're somewhat or mostly wrong. But you have to start somewhere. And that's the whole thing. It's why I don't give like the Big Bang hypothesis overly much shit, even though I think it's incorrect. Well, I know it's incorrect. Or excuse me, I know it's wrong. That doesn't mean it's incorrect. But I know it's wrong. We just don't know how wrong and in what ways yet, right? Because there are so many things in the universe that the Big Bang hypothesis cannot explain. And we discover more and more each year. And this is what's causing a crisis in cosmology. And you see people see stuff like this, and especially with the COVID stuff, and then they start saying, oh, the experts can't be trusted, and it's like, oh man, like everybody's learning the wrong lessons from this. And it's that, no, experts are human. So you remember yesterday we were playing Resurgence and Wilson threw the rock on the bridge? Trust but verify. That's what you have to do. Yes, experts are needed because, like, technically, if I were still running a nuclear power plant, I would consider myself an expert specifically on that nuclear power plant, right? Because if you work with it every day and you read the manuals every day and you understand how the goddamn thing works and you're literally doing the things to make it work every single day, then you would be an expert, at least on its operation, if not its construction, obviously, right? And so experts are needed. That doesn't mean they can't be wrong. That doesn't mean they can't lie. That doesn't mean they are perfect baby angels who never did nothing wrong. What it means is they're human who have studied a subject and or know a thing so much that one would consider them an authority on that subject. It's not does not mean that experts are useless. It means that some experts are useless, right? Like, how many of you have ever met a car mechanic that was an absolute shit mechanic? Well, guess what? He's supposed to be an expert on how to be a car mechanic. Guess what? They're fucking not, right? We've all seen this. Oh yeah, he's just some dude who says he's a painter and he's gonna come paint your house. Well, you can tell he's not an expert because he fucked it up, right? This is what I'm talking about. Like every day we trust experts on things to do things for us every day, all day. Every time you go someplace to get something done, 9 times out of 10, the person doing it is an expert in that specific thing, right? Because if they weren't an expert in that specific thing, they wouldn't be able to fucking do it. And you can tell how good their expertise is based on their end product. You can judge a person by the fruits of their labor, or by their fruits, I should say. That's a quote from fucking Jesus. And it's very true. So how do you know an expert is a good expert? Well, look at their work. That's all you got to do. If a person says he's an expert woodworker, well, I'm sure he's got a portfolio of shit he's built. Just like an artist who says that I'm a good artist. Well, I'm sure can you show me a bunch of drawings that where you can show me your talent? Of course you can. And so, and in some areas, it's not so easy to verify that you're an expert in something. Obviously, it's easy to verify whether you're a good artist or not because of the things that you could potentially draw, right? Even if it's not something that you're interested in drawing, you can draw a highly technical, piece of art to prove that you have artistic talent. Like, if you have it, you have it. That's just as simple as it is. Or you have the ability to do it. In an expert, it's a little bit different because especially when you're talking about things that are like more scientifically based, the only way to verify expertise is to have another expert verify, right? So it's a little bit hard. Luckily, science is also a team sport, just like politics, and so you have people on all sides, on multiple sides, fighting with one another the entire time, calling each other fucking crazy and ludicrous, and your theories and this all. You know how it is. Like, humans are getting human, so they human. They tend to be more intelligent, but that doesn't make them any less human or any less ape-like. We got to remember this. Scientists are humans too. Putting on a lab coat, just like putting on like preacher vestments, does not make you a better person. It does not. The actions after you do that determine whether or not you're a better person. What post-apocalyptic movies are unrealistic? You're shattering my world. Of course, dude. Of course. This is one of the things that I really like. I know people. Here's how it works. You need something for the plot to move forward. But you're too lazy to come up with something realistic, so you just make some shit up. And the problem is that it used to be that it wasn't that big of a deal, right? But now we have the internet. So when you do something really fucking stupid that like defies the laws of physics in a movie, and it's not properly like explained, many people will understand that this is the case by intuition because they've been exposed to it. And it will take them out of the fantastical experience. And this is why I like having that kind of accuracy. Gasoline shouldn't work after 30 years. So if you need a car, find something else. Like, seriously. Like, make it some kind of... It doesn't matter. We don't need to get into that. My whole spiel on this is that it's all of this bullshit is connected. And somebody said... I saw this on Twitter... and it's basically, everybody's getting dumber. We're all getting dumber. And Twitter is just a cesspool where they all congregate. And it's like, no, sir. No, sir. No. That's not how it works. Humans are human. We've always been fucking stupid. We've always been idiots. This is the normal way we are. What happens is that you have a few people who are able to create things that make everybody's life better. And these have compounded over the centuries to give us the world we have today. Right? And there are ancillary things like the fact that, the founders based what they wanted our country to be on like Greek democracy and Roman Republic, with Judeo-Christian, everybody is equal before God philosophy kind of mashed together in its own thing. And the reason that how should I put this? The reason that the founders were so smart is not because they did all those things. The reason I think they were so smart is because they understood human nature. They understood that humans are going to human. That if you give a man political power, he will use that political power to oppress and suppress his enemies. And many of them will actually believe they are doing the correct thing. In Germany right now, they are going to ban, the first or second largest fucking party in the entire country because they're fucking racists. It's lovely, ain't it? And so They understood human nature. So we're not getting stupid. We've always been this way. The fact that we don't have nuclear power proves it. This is just one point on the graph of evidence that people have always been stupid. They've always been able to be fear-mongered. This is not something new. It's always been this way, right? The facade that we were more intelligent in the past comes from the fact that only the intelligent people were really able to be in media. The intelligent people are the ones that wrote all the books, right? Because they were because they were more likely to be literate. The intelligent people were the ones that wrote all the papers. They basically did everything. They were all they were all recorded down in history for the vast majority of it, right? Especially as regards to current events, right? When you go back and listen to Bush talk about the trade deficit shit from like the 1920s. And it's like, wow. And we called him the stupid one. And it's very interesting. And like I said, I don't think that we're getting stupider. I don't think it's idiocracy. I don't think that's what's going on. I think that's a funny meme, and it's an interesting paradigm that is true, but I don't think it does not track with how genetics actually works. If you want to, because intelligence variation is actually quite distinct. So a lot of it is hereditary, but even stupid people can produce a genius, right? Sheldon is like a fictional representation of that. I believe I'm a representation of that. The vast majority of my family are smart. No, let me rephrase that. The vast majority of my family are high school educated, but many of them are not as smart as me. And I'm not trying to be like, that's not a down on them. Many of my cousins went to college. One of my cousins is a fucking pharmacist. He's obviously fucking smart, right? And the dude who owns a landscaping company, he's obviously fucking smart. But not everybody in my family is. And in fact, the vast majority of my people in my family are not that smart, especially when it comes to understanding like scientific concepts and more esoteric things that are involved with science. That's not a dig at them. That's just simply how it is. Saying someone has a low IQ has no moral component to it unless you put it there. It's like calling someone short or tall, right? Because it's based on genetics. However, genetic variation is in the extreme in this instance, because you can have an entire family of redneck white trash and they will produce someone with like 150 IQ. It's entirely possible. Just as if you have a bunch of rich motherfuckers who are highly intelligent, they're hovering at like 130, 140 IQ, and like half their kids could be fucking mouth drooling retards, right? So you're more likely to have intelligent children if you're intelligent and you're healthy and all other things are controlled, but it's not guaranteed. It literally is like rolling the dice. Just like the basic genetic experiments you did in high school where you were, doing the hair color and eye color shit, where it's like, oh, you've got recessive and I can't remember what it's called, but the one where it's like one where it actually shows. I don't remember what the terminology is. But where you can see the genes and how they move from generation to generation. Intelligence is a lot like that. It's just a lot more of a crapshoot. Because like for instance, like I'm autistic and ADHD, but I also have a fairly high intelligence. So, but the thing about it is that intelligence is hard to manifest in the real world because of the eccentricities of my brain. And so someone who is highly intelligent may not be able to actually contribute to society because of some other disability they may have. And so you have all these kind of factors that go into it, which would essentially make it average out over time, which is why idiocracy is funny, but it's not exactly correct. And it's only been getting better up until the modern era, and now it looks like it's slightly going back down. And I don't know the reason why, but it might be that it was overinflated to begin with, because one, IQ has not always been the best way to track intelligence. It's getting better, as if I had to say so. This is not my field of expertise, so I'm literally just throwing out stuff that I've learned over the years, and that it's a pretty good approximation of how intelligent you actually are. But it does not show how successful you're going to be in life or any of this other nonsense. It basically just shows how your brain how good of a processor and calculator your brain is, right? How can it solve spatial problems? How well can it solve other problems? And that basically tells you what type of computer you're running. So some people are running on a 100 megahertz processor from the 1990s, and some people are running on fucking, 4-core processor from the 2011, and some people are running on the 8 cores of today, right? That's essentially how it works, and a lot of that is based on genetics. Some of it is based on environment, and a lot of other factors. And so I don't think we're getting dumber as a whole, necessarily, because it's always been this way. And it's just that in the past, only the most intelligent people were able to rise above the noise to get noticed. Only the intelligent people ran the papers. They wrote the papers. They were the ones in government. But now we have the ability for regular people who are not as quite intelligent to get into the fray with social media and stuff like this, and essentially be uplifted to a point where they could potentially participate in civilization. And because now you can see every fucking retard on the internet talking shit, where they wouldn't have been able to do this like out in public, because either their friend group or other people they work with would easily be able to call them out and debate bro them into fucking submission. On the internet, they can literally just be in their own echo chambers and spew their stupidity out to everybody else and never listen to anything else, right? All right, so we're gonna move on.